Good morning. Welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Gradick, your host. Glad to have you with us on this beautiful morning. We've got a program that I know everybody's going to be very interested in, and that is how to get a good night's sleep and how to deal with certain sleep disorders, if you will, going forward. We're very honored to have in studio John Torres, sleep manager at Tanner Health System. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. John Torres is the sleep lab manager at Tanner Health System. He's originally from Miami, Florida. John started his sleep career, never heard that before, a sleep career, in 2010 in Alaska, and has been with Tanner since 2013. He resides in Newnan, Georgia. So you've been around a while. 2013.
Yeah, I bounced around a little bit.
Almost a decade now.
One until the next.
Yeah, so that's good. Well, welcome and thank you for coming in. I think the older I get, a good night's sleep becomes more valuable and more essential, actually, than ever before. One of the things that tends to throw people off, it seems, and I know this may not be the long-term situation, but we fall forward and spring forward and we fall back. Yeah. And it usually takes me 1 to 3 weeks before I know, I'm going around going, well, it's really, it's not 10 o'clock, it's really 9 o'clock. How does the change of seasons and the clock change, the time change, how does it affect the average sleep pattern of most people?
Well, in fall, it's actually a little better than it is in spring. In fall, we actually gain an hour of sleep, so we can actually take advantage of that and get just a little longer sleep. In spring, that is harder on us because we lose an hour. So there is some data suggesting that in spring, when we lose that hour, that heart attacks and such increase by up to 20%. So that's the bigger one of the two.
Holy moly, are you serious?
Yeah.
Dang. Okay. So how do you recommend to people, what practical tips, if any, to help us adjust when when the time change occurs?
You could do things like just as simple as, again, just try to keep your schedule normal. Just get that extra hour of sleep if you can. That's probably one of the best things you can do. You don't need to change your schedule too crazy. You don't need to change, when you eat. Certainly, some people, because we gain that hour, they think they can stay up later. That actually can affect you. So don't stay up later. Don't, go party and drink alcohol. Best thing you really can do is just, again, use that 1 hour of extra sleep.
Let me, before we go further, let me ask you, because this is what you deal with. This is your profession, and I'm sure you see a lot of people that just don't sleep and or find great difficulty in sleeping. How important do you see a good night's sleep and overall health of an individual?
Oh, our sleep affects everything. And it's unfortunate most of us don't realize how much it affects. If you kind of have a bad night, you're going to wake up and probably be in a bad mood, and vice versa. If you have a great night of sleep, you'd probably be in a great mood when you wake up. But I think we don't really realize that. And so people just kind of let sleep get by. They'll stay up late. They'll get up early. They'll kind of, watch TV in bed kind of late. And if we could just prioritize it a little bit more, we'd probably be a little better off.
Well, in terms of longevity, quality of life,
absolutely.
those heart, all the organs, they really need that time to rejuvenate.
Yes, absolutely. One of the common culprits out there with bad sleep is sleep apnea. I feel like that's a term that's being heard a lot lately. And sleep apnea, that does put a lot of stress on your heart while you're sleeping, especially if you're oxygen deprived. So if you're putting the stress on your heart, that puts stress on the rest of the system, and that can lead to some dire consequences with enough time.
For those who don't know, how do you define sleep apnea?
Sleep apnea, we look at it different ways, but the really easiest way to describe it is not getting enough air into the lungs, which reduces the amount of oxygen your heart is getting. So it's really your airways closing up, and you're not able to get that air into your lungs.
But now this affects a lot of people, because is it not true that part of the culprit of that is just too much fat in your neck area?
Weight definitely plays a big role into sleep apnea. There are some people who find the more weight they put on, the less sleep they tend to get, or I guess less quality is. Or if they lose weight, it tends to get better. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it is hereditary. We've seen people that weigh 90 pounds who have sleep apnea. So just because you are underweight or normal weight doesn't mean you won't be affected by it.
What are some of the symptoms of it?
The biggest ones are going to be snoring, waking up gasping for air, sometimes high blood pressure. It can be fairly common. Headaches in the morning, those are all common symptoms.
And I understand there's a phenomenon where your heart can stop for a moment or so, momentarily, if you have sleep apnea while you're sleeping.
Yeah. Again, because with sleep apnea, it puts a lot of stress on your system. However your heart handles that stress can be a multitude of ways.
Well, that's a great segue into now your sleep manager. So tell us about the sleep lab there at Tanner and how y'all diagnose and go about diagnosing something like sleep apnea.
Well, we've got 3 different locations. We have Villa Rica, Carrollton, and one in Wadowee. And so a normal night would be someone comes in, probably usually about 7 to 8:30 at night. They'll come in. We have technologists working there, and they'll put an array of sensors and wires on it, which sounds a little uncomfortable. But from my personal experience, the longer I always kind of lay there, the less I notice the wires. But they'll use all those sensors. That transfers into a computer room where they can see all the leads as they're coming into the computer. And we'll use those sensors to diagnose your sleep apnea.
So basically the patient spends the night in the lab, correct?
Yes, they'll be there till morning.
So basically you're being observed and whatever during the entire night.
Yes.
And from there you determine how good or bad the sleep pattern is of the individual.
Correct, yeah.
And so, I mean, it would seem like you take me to a lab and say, copy in, go to bed, go to sleep. I'm like, are you crazy? I can't. How do you? I mean, there got to be people that can't sleep in a lab environment. You would think. Oh
yeah, we definitely know that. We know, you're out of your comfort zone. Maybe you don't have your pillow, or it's not your bed. Maybe right. Your dog's not at your side. So we know all of that. But once you do get to sleep, and you will eventually get to sleep, your tiredness will win. The body does what it does while it sleeps. And so if you have sleep apnea, it doesn't matter if you're home or at a hotel or in a sleep lab, that sleep apnea will be shown and we'll treat it.
Our guest this morning is John Torres, sleep lab manager at Tanner. We're going to come back. We've got plenty to talk about: insomnia, narcolepsy, restless leg syndrome. I've got a ton of other questions. So stay with us, and we'll be back with more after this.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
I'm Michael Flynn, Oak Mountain Academy class of 1978.
Katie Flynn, class of 2010.
Justin Flynn, class of 2014.
Logan Flynn, class of 2019.
And I'm Marnie Flynn, current teacher at OMA.
My uncle Richard Orm Flynn, a founding father of Oak Mountain Academy, had a vision to see students become confident leaders who hold a faith-based value system in an academically rigorous environment. We are proud to celebrate 60 years of fulfilling my uncle's vision.
Our family invites you to visit the campus or oakmountain.us today.
All right, good morning. Welcome back to Community Voice. This is a content-rich program. Most of them are, but this one particularly. So we had a question submitted from a listener and also a sometime critic. But anyway, so it say you for whatever reason in your life you can only sleep 5 hours one night. And you say, well, I'll catch up the next night. I'll sleep 13 hours or whatever. Is that a reasonable approach?
Unfortunately, no, that won't work. So once you kind of lose that sleep, if you only sleep 4 or 5 hours that one night, there's essentially no making it up.
So when you lose it, it's gone forever.
It's pretty much gone, yeah. Even if you slept 12 hours the next day.
So when you do that, you're hurting your overall physical quality.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's not good news. There's one thing I do want to ask before, because there's several things we want to get into deeply, but you mentioned watching TV before going to bed. Now, we hear a lot of stories now about whatever you do, turn off that digital screen 1 hour before you go to bed. Keep the cell phone in another room. Don't sleep with your stinking cell phone, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a truth to that?
Oh, absolutely. The big one, especially at the TV, it's a stimulant, so you're just kind of keeping your brain awake instead of winding down. With the cell phones, the big concern for that one is the blue screen. A lot of these phones now have a blue light filter, I think it's called, and you should turn the filter on so that it's a little easier on your eyes and helps you kind of wind down.
So similarly, in your bedroom, if you've got all these little indicator lights going on, I mean, you can light up the whole room with, those lights. But those lights can also inhibit sleep, correct?
Those are more probably just distractions than anything.
Okay.
For example, myself, these little lights sometimes are a little too distracting. I just have to go around and shut them off. But everyone's different, I suppose, with those.
Okay. We're on Facebook Live. If anybody would like to post a question or comment, we'll be happy to try to get to it. There's so much to this that I want to ask. Let's talk, because I mean you're the sleep lab manager, and when people come in or they're brought in to be diagnosed and they have chronic insomnia, how do you first approach that? I mean, that's got to be. Fortunately, I don't have chronic insomnia, but yeah, it's got to be a horrible way to try to live a life.
Yeah, insomnia is that's a tough one. Insomnia itself is a symptom of something else, whether that's stress or diet or medications or just hereditary, something else going on in your life. It's hard to pinpoint where the insomnia is coming from. So we can treat it, a lot of times, I guess through medication, but finding the root cause of that insomnia can sometimes be fairly challenging.
I'm a big deal about natural, cures, natural treatments, et cetera, et cetera. So when you hear about insomnia and you talk to people who have insomnia or trouble sleeping, they always tell you about melatonin, and I've had a couple tell me that it really gives you some funky dreams. So what's your thought process on melatonin?
Overall, I do like melatonin. I don't think it should be used every single day. I think it should be more used as needed, or if you're jet lagged or just, need to get a bed early. But my concern with melatonin has always been someone developing a sort of dependence on it where they just feel they need it every single day. At that point, I start to become a little, worried about it.
What about essential oils?
I've never used any. I'm sure it helps some out there, but personally, I don't believe it would help the majority of the people.
Well, that kind of leads into the, I think, the really kind of core question when it comes to getting a good night's sleep is, and we mentioned the cell phones, the blue screens, et cetera, but sleep is really relaxing, is it not?
Yes.
And so if you're all stressed up, or if you do what I did for several years, get up at 3 a.m. and generate some emails that you wish you hadn't, tell us about the relationship of stress to a good night's sleep.
Again, stress can lead to all sorts of things in the body, from weight gain or insomnia, like we just mentioned. So whatever is causing you stress, again, that's, I guess, hard to say as well, but whatever's causing you stress in your life, we certainly want to try to minimize that so that you can sleep better, especially if that stress is occurring at night.
So it would seem like, therefore, the way to a good night's sleep is one of the first things to do is before you go to bed, a couple hours before you go to bed. So whatever stress you got, try to get rid of it.
Oh, absolutely.
So you can really relax and get a good night's sleep, because otherwise you're tossing and turning and thinking about the boss being an idiot, right? So anyway, okay. Well, I think that's an important point. I don't think I know I haven't ever really thought about the direct relationship between stress and a good night's sleep. All right. Let's go back to the lab, if we might. And you talked about the leads and sleeping there overnight. but and we've got you say we're in 3 locations in terms of you got labs in 3 locations. Is that
Yes, correct.
That's Carrollton, Villarica, and Wedowee. How long have they been? When did they originate, and how effective do you think they are in dealing? Because these are multiple kind of sleep disorders.
When did what originate? I'm sorry.
When did the labs come about? When did y'all build them or institute them? You've been there since 2013. Is that when they began?
Well, the building we're in now has been there since 2015, but the sleep program in Tanner has been there for many years before I even got there.
Really?
And the one in Wedowee is our newest location. That one's a few years old. And Villarica, I believe, has been there over 10 years as well. I'm not too sure. That's again a little before my time. But they, as far as treating things like sleep apnea, like we discussed, I think it does a great job. I mean, sleep apnea is such a common thing that most people don't really realize they have it, or it's easy to put off. Oh yeah, I snore, but that's okay. Yeah, I'm tired, but that's okay. Where really, the amount of times we've heard someone say, I'm a little tired, but I'm okay, and they come in, they get put on a CPAP machine, and they say, wow, I feel so much better. I didn't realize how tired I was. We see that all the time.
Sleep apnea contributes to fibrillation,
yes.
Which is very difficult to treat. Let's flip to the far side of this, narcolepsy. How do you define narcolepsy? And let's start with that.
Narcolepsy really just means you sleep a lot and are still tired. So by a lot, I mean you might sleep 10, 12, 14 hours a day, but when you wake up, you feel as if you only slept 2 hours or 4. It's basically, in a nutshell, means you sleep a lot, but you're still tired.
Well, and y'all diagnose that, correct?
Yes.
And how's that treated?
Narcolepsy, again, is one of those things that's just a little tough to handle. It's a neurological disorder, so we can treat it through some medication, and things like even timed naps are effective. But there won't ever be a cure, at least in today's age, for narcolepsy.
Okay. We're going to take our second break here from Tanner Health System, of course, and Oak Mountain Academy. We'll be back with more with John Torres after this.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
As a believer in the power of education, we are called to set the standard by shaping and empowering the minds of future generations through quality education. Oak Mountain Academy embraces this philosophy, which is why my children attend this prestigious school. I am elated to serve on the OMA Board of Trustees, where together we prepare students and remind them to trust and believe in the power to transform the world. I'm Dr. Brian Bain, inviting you to celebrate our 60-year legacy of academic excellence. Visit us at oakmountain.us.
Good morning. Welcome back to Community Voice. I'm Steve Gredick, your host. We've got John Torres in studio, sleep lab manager at Tanner Health System. 3 labs going on in the Tanner system. And I'm learning a lot. I hope you are too. All right, let's we see commercials sometimes, and I'm familiar with weighted blankets, restless leg syndrome. That's when you kind of wake yourself up and you're running a marathon. It's like, well, yeah, this is crazy. So how does that come about, and how? I guess that's easy to diagnose in the lab because it's very visual. So tell us more about that and whatever treatments and what your thoughts are on that.
Yep, that one's going to be, it's easy to diagnose but difficult, I don't want to say to treat, but restless leg syndrome is kind of defined as unpleasant leg sensations. It could be a burning, itching, creepy, crawly feeling. Your legs may kind of kick around on their own. Some people will just be watching TV and their legs are just kicking around on their own. Yes, we can easily diagnose that. Treatment is going to be through medications. And so you have to see your doctor about getting those treated.
Well, it'll wake you up, so it interrupts your sleep, correct?
Yeah, that you're probably referring to what's called periodic limb movement disorder. It's actually very similar to restless leg syndrome. One occurs while you're awake, the other occurs while you're asleep. So while you're being woken up by your own kicks, yes, that's periodic limb movement disorder.
That's what I was referring to. Yeah. Anyway, circadian rhythm disorders. How do you define those, and how are they diagnosed?
Well, that's more like your circadian rhythm is essentially your internal clock. It's your brain telling you when to eat, when to sleep. And so some people can get thrown off, especially if you work a schedule where you work at night, or maybe your schedule changes every week. 1 week you work during the day, 1 week you work at night. That'll throw off your circadian rhythm. It makes it very hard to get good rested sleep when you're just constantly throwing yourself off.
But you may not have a choice. Your work schedule may demand it.
Yes, that's true, and that's just an unfortunate thing people learn to live with. This essentially, I was a sleep tech for over 10 years and working the night shift, and you essentially just kind of get used to it as best you can. It's not ideal, but I guess we have to do what they do sometimes.
Well, sometimes you do hear that those who work the overnight shift are somehow going to be less healthy as a result. I mean, is that true?
I guess, and again, that's because that circadian rhythm being thrown off its proper balance. Also at night, it's a little easier to kind of get bored and snack some more. There's some merit to that. But in general, yes, it's your circadian rhythm being thrown off, so that affects you in all sorts of ways.
So basically, when it's dark outside, we should be basically sleeping, and when it's light outside, we should be active and working and doing whatever, correct?
Yes, and again, unfortunately, the world around us doesn't always allow that.
Yeah, and so I think, it reminds us to appreciate those people that do have to work the overnight shift and what they're called upon to do, like, law enforcement or hospital workers, et cetera. All right, well, that's what would you say to the average person as they get older in terms of maintaining or achieving a good night's sleep? The older you get, the more difficult it becomes to do certain things. It seems like getting a good night's sleep is one of them, because probably you're less active during the day, less physically active. So what are some good tips as you get older? We mentioned before the show about blood pressure, it goes up as you get older, et cetera. What recommendations as someone gets older do you give them, if anything's particular, maybe not, in terms of getting a good night's sleep?
Well, one thing as we get older, first let me say there's different stages of sleep that we look at. There's simply stage 1, 2, 3, and REM. Now, stage 3 is kind of that deep sleep. That's kind of the common name for it. For example, a child spends almost the entire night in that stage 3 just getting good deep sleep, which is sometimes why they're hard to wake up for school. As we get older, we lose that stage 3. And by the time you're in your later stages of life, it's almost non-existent. So that deep stage sleep just isn't there. And so the best thing you can do to work around that is just try to get as much rest as possible. And some of those things we talked about earlier, and get rid of the cell phone a little earlier, reduce stress by whatever means possible, whether that's taking a warm bath or exercising, going for a walk at some point during the day. Just little things like that are the best things you could probably do for yourself.
Now, you mentioned REM sleep. Now, what is that? I've heard that if you don't get REM sleep, you're not really achieving a good night's sleep.
REM sleep is our dream stage, basically. That's, the data kind of shows that when someone's in their REM stage, that is when they're dreaming. There's nothing you can really do to get into. I mean, it just happens naturally. If you wake up and say, I didn't have any dreams last night, it doesn't mean you didn't have that REM stage. You may just not remember those dreams that you had. But most people will get into the REM sleep naturally.
All this is a lot to take in. I mean, this is really, it's very important, but it's also very, in some ways, it's kind of complicated. Is there any way you can kind of pare it down to just a very simple, core recommendation?
Well, we have something we call sleep hygiene, which means only use the bed for sleep essentially, or
Really?
just to rest. Don't watch TV in bed. I don't know if this ever happened to you, but it happens to me where if you watch TV in bed and you lay there a little too long, when you shut it off to go to bed, suddenly you're not comfortable. You roll over, you've been in the bed too long, now you have to get up, kind of reset yourself.
What about reading books in bed?
Well, that's a good de-stressor for a lot of people, so you can certainly do that. But again, back to the cell phone even, or going for a walk at some point. Just these little things really add up to get good night's rest.
Maybe the easy way is, I guess maybe as you get older, I don't know, but you got to kind of work at it. You got to pay attention to it, and you got to plan for it, and you got to really think about it. You can't just, you shouldn't ignore it anyway if you're not getting good sleep, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, sleep is one of those things that's easy to kind of ignore. We hear a lot of people say, yeah, I'm tired, but that's okay. I got things to do, or, any sort of, I hate to call it an excuse, but essentially that it's easy to ignore your sleep because it doesn't hurt, right? It doesn't physically hurt to get up and, wake up at 4 a.m. or go to bed late.
What about these people? I'm certainly not one of them, but I'm sure you've heard of them or talked to them. These people that say, "Well, I got up at 4:30, I went out and ran 5 miles, and now I'm ready to hit the day and blah blah blah." And I'm going, I rolled out of bed at 6:30, I'm dead. What about these people that get up early and they're like, go 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 go? I mean, are they smart in doing that?
One thing we also have kind of learned is some people need less sleep than others. We've seen people who can function off of 4 or 5 hours of sleep and they live a normal, healthy life. It's one of those things we're just all a little different. The majority of us will need those 8 hours or close to.
And that's what's recommended, correct?
Yes, that is the recommended sleep. Yeah.
Well, I'm committed to that. So.
Me too.
It's one of my commitments in life. All right. If people need to contact you or have more questions, or how should they go about it?
Well, they can certainly reach us through Tanner. That's tanner.org. Our number is on there if you just look for the sleep department. That's probably the easiest way to find us. We also have a Facebook page for those that would like to go through those channels.
Are you hopeful they're going to eliminate the spring forward, fall back time change?
Oh, fingers
Are you
crossed.
Really? Fingers crossed. Well, I think it's been approved, but it hasn't been implemented yet, or something to that effect. I haven't kept up with it, but it seems like. But Arizona's already not changing. I know that's about all I know about it. So, okay. Any parting beyond what we mentioned? Any parting kind of? Because I tend to approach this kind of in a lighthearted manner, but if you do have sleep apnea, if you do have some of these situations, these can be life-threatening. So I guess the takeaway is if you've got something like this, consider it very strongly. Certainly, yeah. If you had any concerns, certainly talk to your doctor about it, or you can reach us at the Sleep Lab. We can point you in the right direction. If you needed to, if you didn't know what doctor to see, we can certainly help you out. Are there physician specialists in this realm? There is, yes. There's board-certified sleep doctors. Really? Okay. Well, I've learned a lot. I hope everyone else has too. John, thank you for coming in. Thank you for the work you do. Oh, thank you. We thank everybody for listening. Have a great weekend, and we thank our sponsors, Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy. I'll be back, oddly enough, on Monday with Dr. Joey Smith, and that should be interesting as we talk about inflation, unemployment, and all those fun topics. Go out and make it a great day. You're in tune to WLBB Carrollton.